Hello everyone, Charles Watts here, the Arsenal correspondent at Goal, joining you on Friday, 2 days away now from Arsenal's game at Brentford in the Premier League, and just after Mikel Arteta's press conference at London Colney. I know normally I do the press conference from London Colney, but I had to get back. M25 was a nightmare. I had to make sure I could get back in time to pick my kids up, so apologies for that. You just got the old boring scene behind me. Yes, the wires that I know you all hate, but I'm not changing because I'm dreadful at it, and I'll make it look even worse than that. So unfortunately, the wires are here to stay until I can be bothered to pay someone to come around and do it. But anyway, enough of the wires in my house. Let's talk about what Mikel Arteta had to say in his press conference. We'll start with team news, shall we? Now, interestingly enough, in this one, Ukraine announced today that Zinchenko is injured and will miss the Brentford game, and he's going to be out for 2 weeks and won't be going away in the international break, which was obviously very disappointing news to hear this morning. Mikel wasn't. It was weird. I asked Mikel about this in the press conference because he wasn't saying anything about team news. He kept saying, I'll say it here. He said, when he first asked about it, he said, unfortunately, updates will be tomorrow, Saturday. Whoever will have to be ruled out, that is going to be tomorrow. We have these 24 hours to see. 1 or 2 can be considered tomorrow for training and for selection, and that will be key in the next 24 hours. He just wasn't giving anything away when he was sort of pushed on names specifically. But then I asked him about Zinchenko. I said, look, Ukraine have announced it. They've said he's out. Can you just tell us a little bit more about it and how serious it is? And he still just won't go there. He says, again, we have to wait until tomorrow to make that decision. Where he was on that moment and what we have decided to do for International Week doesn't mean that we are going to say the same for the weekend. So it's something we'll address tomorrow. Now, that's quite interesting. Whether that means they might try and patch him up to make sure he can play at the weekend, but they know that he can't then fly out and play 2 games. That's just going to be too much. Maybe he's saying that. I can't imagine that would go down very well in Ukraine if he plays this weekend and then has already ruled himself out of playing for the national team. So it's an interesting one. I mean, it feels like he won't play just because of what Ukraine have done, but and what they've said. But yeah, Mikel certainly didn't rule it out today. So it's one that we'll have to wait and see exactly what happens when the team is announced on Sunday. But that's what he had to say about Zinchenko. He spoke about Ben White, mainly about the fact, he hadn't been called up for England. And he was asked specifically, is that a selection issue or is it a fitness issue? And he said it's not a fitness issue. And he said he's fit, because there have been whispers that Ben White may well miss out. But Mikel says he's fit and that he will be available. And that the reason he didn't get called up for England it was nothing to do with fitness. So not sure on Zinchenko. We'll have to wait and see. But Ukraine certainly say he's out. But Mikel says that Ben White is fit. And elsewhere, like I said, Thomas Partey has been training. So when Mikel says they'll make a decision on 1 or 2 players tomorrow, I'm presuming Thomas Partey will be one of those. But you would think if he's been training all week that he will be fit and he will be playing, he will be starting. But so mixed news on the team news. But as usual, Mikel, he keeps things very, very close to his chest. Always does. It's a nightmare when you try and talk to him about team news, which is kind of understandable, I suppose, because you don't want to be giving too many major clues away to opposition managers. But it tends to get out behind the scenes anyway. So, but he's keeping that close to his chest, and he's like that with transfers as well. And I see so many of you ask on social media, why don't you ask him about this player? Why don't you ask him about that player? Whether it's transfers or injuries, the fact is he just doesn't answer. So when you only get a couple of questions, at times it's like there's no point wasting one on something that he's just not going to answer, because from working with him before that he's not going to answer. So that's why sometimes some of the questions you guys do want asked about specific transfer targets or something like that don't get asked, because we just know he's not going to answer them, because he doesn't. He just shoots them down. I'm sure you've seen that all before as well. Anyway, so that's what he's had to say on team news. I mean, elsewhere, like I said, Thomas Partey should be back. No Reece Nelson, no Mohamed El Neni, no Emil Smith-Rowe. We're not expecting Smith-Rowe anyway. It's not totally ruled out, but I don't think Smith-Rowe is going to play. And so a few choices for Mikel to make ahead of that game against Brentford on Sunday. Just before the press conference, it was announced Mikel Arteta had been named manager of the month for August by the Premier League. No surprise, Arsenal top of the table. Obviously, yes, they lost to Man United, but I think that was in September anyway, the Man United defeat, off the top of my head. Can't quite think back to exactly what that date was, but Arsenal top of the table, and he was always going to get that manager a month award, you would think. Not been great for him in the past. He's got it twice. This is the 3rd time he's got it now since being at Arsenal. got a feeling he might have lost the game afterwards both times. And we all know about the whole manager of the month curse that all managers talk about. I think last time when he got it in March, Arsenal lost the next 3 games after that. That was when they had those 3 awful results against Southampton, Brighton and Palace. So hopefully history doesn't repeat itself. He was asked about it and he said, it's great. I think it's a sign that the team is performing well. The team is winning football matches and it's a consequence of that. Thank you to all the people that are involved at the club that contribute to us on a daily basis, who make the job easier. Obviously to the players as well. They're the ones on the field making a difference and helping us win. And to our supporters, thank you very much. So very happy Mikel Arteta there, and very much deserved considering Arsenal's start to the season. He was talking, obviously, asked a lot about Brentford, and Ivan Toney was asked about. He's asked about that Ivan Toney tweet, which I'll get to. But in terms of Brentford, you can really tell when Mikel talks. Sometimes when you're listening to managers, you think, yeah, you're saying that for the sake of it. It's just filler. But you could really tell when Mikel talks about Brentford that he has an awful lot of respect for them, how they play, the way they go out and do their business. You can just tell they're a club and a team that he has a lot of respect for. And he says, I think they're a really good side. I think what Thomas and the staff have done there, not only this year but over the years, I think is remarkable. The way they've performed and the results they've got against the top clubs as well, especially at home, just sets the tone and what is going to happen on Sunday. And we are very aware of how difficult it is going to be to beat them. And, you know, it's absolutely true. It is going to be a really difficult game for Arsenal on Sunday. We've seen what Brentford have done this season at home, hammering Man United 4-0, hammering Leeds, whatever that was, 5-2 I think it was. They score goals, they're really well organised. We know what happened last time Arsenal went to the Brentford Community Stadium. Yes, there was mitigating circumstances behind that defeat and that performance, but still, Brentford are a very, very strong team, and you certainly got that impression from today's press conference coming away from it, that Mikel Arteta knew that his team were going to have to be bang on it if they could get the win that would take them into the international break, sitting top of the Premier League, which would be fantastic. When you think they went into the first international break last season, bottom of the Premier League with no points, no goals, 3 defeats out of 3, and then if they win tomorrow, they're going to go into the first international break of the season, top of the table with 5 wins out of 6. Is it 5 wins out of 6? It was 6 wins out of 7. Oh, sorry, I can't even think how many. I think it's 5 wins out of 6, isn't it? It would be a fantastic achievement and fair play to Arsenal if they can do that. But long way to go. They've got to do it first. Ivan Toney's tweet came up, as you can imagine. That was it was in jest, wasn't it? At the end of the 2-0 win there last season, he did the whole nice kickabout with the boys that went viral. Then we saw Arteta in Amazon All or Nothing talking about it in the team talk before the return game against Brentford. You could see it annoyed him. He used that as a motivational tool ahead of that game against Brentford at the Emirates just before the players went out. He was asked about it and he said, anyone can tweet, anyone can write whatever they want, and I'm here to judge if it's necessary to use in a way that I believe is most powerful. He was then asked, would you want your players to tweet like that? He said, I like my players to act in a certain way and I'm happy with the way they act. So he wasn't really going to, I don't think he was being very careful not to generate headlines, I think, with his response, but you could tell that tweet annoyed him a little bit, and it's certainly maybe going to add a little bit of extra spice to Sunday's game. But Ivan Toney, obviously just called up by England, deservedly so. I think he's been brilliant this season. I think he was brilliant last season in his first season of the Premier League. Absolutely deserves that call up to England. If Arsenal are going to win on Sunday, they're going to have to make sure they stop Ivan Toney because he's a very, very impressive player and he's causing lots of teams problems. Lots of other stuff discussed during the press conference. If you want to again see the full transcript, you can find it on arsenal.com at the moment. He talked about Emil Smith-Rowe and his fitness issues, which are definitely a concern. They need to sort that out. Need to try and get him to stay fit because he's just been carrying this injury basically for around a year now. And he just can't get himself back to the sort of form and the fitness that we saw him in that first half of last season when he was causing such problems to teams. And so he spoke about that. He's talked about a lot of other stuff. Obviously, he was asked about the Queen. I asked him about Marquinhos, actually, because Marquinhos, after that Zurich game, there was no press conference because of what had happened. It was a day, the Queen's death had been announced about an hour before kickoff, whenever it was. Actually, it was at half-time, wasn't it? So Arsenal called up, they didn't do a press conference after the game. So no one got the opportunity to ask about Marquinhos in that game because he played so well. And so I asked him about that performance, and he said, and how happy he was to see that. And I spoke about how emotional Marquinhos was after the goal. And he said, I was looking more at the faces of the rest of the staff and players. He's a very popular player. He speaks no English, but just with his smile and attitude, he has earned the respect and admiration of everybody here. It was a big step for him because he hasn't played enough minutes with us, but we were willing to give him the opportunity. I think he deserved it. He took it really well, and he's a player that needs to keep developing. And in order to do that, we need to give him more opportunities. So I asked him, is he ready for the Premier League? Are we going to see him in the Premier League soon? And he said, we want to build the steps. And when we have asked him to play with us and for the under-21s, he's done incredibly well. His attitude towards every coach and player has been seen, and it couldn't be any better. That's what we expect from the players. So that's why he got his chance against Zurich, and he might get another chance very soon. I'm sure we're going to see him in the Europa League between now and the end of the group stages, just like at Zurich. I imagine he'll start pretty much every game if he's fit, to be fair, on the right-hand side of attack. So we're going to see plenty more opportunities. It'll be interesting to see what happens with him in January. Is that the time to send him out on loan over the second half of the season, when maybe Arteta will go a lot stronger in the knockout stages of the Europa League? So when's Marquinhos really going to get chances then? So it kind of feels like, if he's going to, what's the point in keeping around the second half of the season if you're not really going to get many minutes in the Premier League? If your opportunities in Europa League are going to dry up a little bit because Mikel will probably go with a stronger team, then that's a time to send him out on loan. It is something that I believe has been discussed, and we'll have to wait and see what happens in January, whether he will be sticking around or he will get on loan. Personally, for me, it feels like it would be a good time maybe to get him out on loan for a few months. He'd come over here, he's acclimatised really well. We'd have had 6 odd months to get used to the club. He'd have got some minutes in the Europa League. So it's just, that was a really good settling in period for him. I think maybe it wouldn't have been great to send him straight out because he wouldn't have had any time to adjust. He'd have sort of come in and gone straight out. But now he's had an opportunity to get to know the club, settle in here, and then once that's happened, maybe then send him out for the second half of the season, let him get regular minutes somewhere, maybe in another league, and then come back next summer and really try and kick on and push for a more regular place in the, not starting 11, but certainly in the Premier League squad. And on the level of performances we've seen so far from him through the under-21s and that performance against Zurich, he certainly seems like he's not way off it, which is a real positive. Elsewhere, he spoke about Arsene Wenger, lots of other things. But yeah, as I said, if you want to see the full transcript of what Mikel Arteta had to say during his press conference, then head over right now to arsenal.com. You see the full transcript there. I won't do my predicted 11 today. I will do that. I'll try and get a video squeezed in tomorrow if I can. So hopefully if I find the time to do that, then I will do my predicted 11 for you then and talk a little bit more about that Brentford game. Till then, everyone, have a very good end to your working week, and please do have a fantastic weekend. I'll speak to you very, very soon.